Have you ever wondered why gardening feels like a full-time job by June? Constant watering, endless weeding, and replacing heat-stressed flowers can quickly become exhausting. But some perennials are built differently. They thrive in hot weather, tolerate poor soil and drought, and return year after year with very little care, often spreading naturally as they grow. Better yet, many attract butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds, bringing even more life to your garden. Today we're sharing 8 tough perennials that multiply on their own, bloom beautifully, and make gardening easier every season. Stay until the end because the final plant can thrive for generations with minimal maintenance. 1. Daylily. If gardeners were asked to choose one perennial that perfectly represents toughness and reliability, the daylily would almost certainly be near the top of the list. These colorful flowers have earned a remarkable reputation because they continue thriving under conditions that would challenge many other ornamentals. Once established, daylilies tolerate intense summer heat, long periods without rain, heavy clay, poor soil, and even occasional flooding with impressive ease. Whether your climate is hot and humid or dry with relentless sunshine, there is almost certainly a daylily variety that will flourish in your garden. One of the biggest reasons gardeners value daylilies is their incredible ability to multiply. Every year, the underground crown produces additional fans of foliage, gradually forming larger and larger clumps. A single plant can eventually develop into a spectacular mass of dozens or even hundreds of flowering stems. Every few years, those crowded clumps can be lifted from the ground and divided into several smaller sections, allowing one plant to become many without spending another dollar. This natural ability to reproduce makes daylilies one of the most economical flowering perennials you can grow, because your garden continuously creates new plants on its own. Although each bloom lasts only a single day, which inspired the plant's name, mature plants produce so many buds that fresh flowers continue opening every morning for weeks. As one blossom fades, another immediately takes its place, creating an almost uninterrupted display of color throughout early and midsummer. Many newer reblooming varieties even reward gardeners with a second flowering period later in the season. Daylilies are also remarkably adaptable when it comes to light. They bloom most heavily in full sun but also perform surprisingly well in partial shade. And in especially hot climates, a little afternoon shade can actually help the flowers remain vibrant longer. Caring for them requires very little effort. During their first growing season, regular watering helps establish a strong root system. Afterward, natural rainfall is often sufficient, except during unusually prolonged droughts. A layer of mulch helps retain moisture, although mature plants usually continue growing well even without it. Serious pest or disease problems are uncommon, and deer generally browse them less frequently than many other ornamental plants. The only maintenance most gardeners perform is dividing overcrowded clumps every 4 or 5 years. Not because the plants require it to survive, but because division encourages heavier blooming while producing free plants for other parts of the landscape. Landscape designers appreciate their versatility as well. Daylilies look equally attractive planted beside driveways, along fences, around mailboxes, beneath trees, on difficult slopes, and in neglected corners where very few other flowers thrive. Even after the blooms have disappeared, their graceful arching foliage continues adding texture and beauty throughout the growing season. For gardeners looking for maximum impact with minimal effort, very few perennials rival the dependable performance of the daylily. 2. Coneflower. If any perennial perfectly symbolizes strength and resilience, it is undoubtedly the coneflower. Native to the open prairies of North America, this beautiful wildflower evolved under extremely challenging conditions long before gardeners began growing it in flower beds. It survived blazing summer heat, powerful prairie winds, unpredictable rainfall, and nutrient-poor soils entirely on its own. That rugged history explains why coneflowers remain among the easiest and most dependable flowering plants available today. Once established, they develop deep root systems that reach moisture far below the soil's surface, allowing them to continue blooming long after many other flowers begin wilting during dry weather. Their daisy-like blossoms appear in an impressive range of colors, including purple, pink, white, orange, yellow, red, and even green depending on the variety. Rising above sturdy stems, each flower quickly becomes a favorite landing place for butterflies, native bees, and countless other pollinators. During warm summer afternoons, Healthy patches of coneflowers often buzz with constant activity as beneficial insects move from bloom to bloom collecting nectar and pollen. Their value continues even after flowering begins to fade. Rather than removing every spent blossom, leave some seed heads in place because goldfinches and many other songbirds eagerly feed on the nutritious seeds throughout late summer and autumn, adding another layer of wildlife to your garden. Coneflowers naturally spread in more than one way. Mature plants slowly expand into larger clumps while many varieties gently self-seed nearby without becoming aggressively invasive. Tiny seedlings often emerge the following spring, gradually filling flower beds with almost no effort from the gardener. Another reason coneflowers are so widely admired is their excellent disease resistance. Unlike many delicate ornamentals, they rarely experience serious problems when grown in well-drained soil. They require very little fertilizer, no complicated pruning routine, and only minimal maintenance. Full sun encourages the strongest stems and the largest number of flowers, although they also tolerate light afternoon shade in warmer climates. One of the few mistakes gardeners make is overwatering, because coneflowers naturally prefer slightly drier conditions once fully established. Leaving the dried seed heads standing through winter provides additional benefits. Birds continue feeding on them, while the frosted seed heads create beautiful winter scenery after snowfall or icy mornings. Then, as spring arrives, fresh green shoots emerge from the base and begin preparing for another season of spectacular blooms with almost no assistance. For gardeners hoping to create a colorful landscape filled with butterflies, birds, and pollinators while keeping maintenance to a minimum, coneflowers remain one of the smartest perennials available. 3. Black-eyed Susan. Few flowers capture the warmth and happiness of summer quite like black-eyed Susans. Large drifts of their brilliant golden yellow blossoms, swaying gently in the breeze, instantly brighten the landscape and create the feeling of sunshine throughout the garden. Behind their cheerful appearance lies one of the toughest and most dependable flowering perennials you can grow. Black-eyed Susans thrive under conditions that discourage many other flowers. Dry soil, rocky ground, poor fertility, high humidity, intense summer heat, and occasional neglect rarely slow them down. In fact, many gardeners joke that these flowers seem to perform even better when left alone. Once established, they develop strong root systems that allow them to withstand drought remarkably well. While neighboring flowers begin wilting during dry periods, black-eyed Susans often continue blooming as though nothing has changed. One of their greatest strengths is the ease with which they multiply. Mature clumps gradually become larger each year while also producing abundant seeds that naturally fall to the ground each autumn. By the following spring, countless tiny seedlings often appear nearby, creating new plants without any effort from the gardener. Unlike some aggressive spreaders, black-eyed Susans usually expand in a balanced and manageable way, filling empty spaces without overwhelming neighboring plants. This makes them ideal for cottage gardens, wildflower meadows, perennial borders, and naturalized landscapes. Their blooming season is another reason for their popularity. While many perennials flower for only a short period, black-eyed Susans often continue blooming from midsummer well into early autumn, providing dependable color during the hottest months of the year after many spring flowers have already faded. Pollinators are equally attracted to them. Bees gather nectar throughout the day. Butterflies visit the blossoms regularly, and many beneficial insects rely on the flowers as an important food source. Later in the season, goldfinches and other birds arrive to feed on the mature seed heads, bringing even more activity into the garden. Maintenance is wonderfully simple. Plant them in a sunny location, provide regular watering during the first growing season, and afterward they require very little attention. Removing faded flowers may encourage additional blooming, but it isn't essential. Leaving some seed heads in place benefits wildlife while allowing the plants to reseed naturally. Every few years, dividing larger clumps helps maintain vigorous flowering, while providing free plants that can be used elsewhere in the landscape or shared with friends. Their sturdy stems also make excellent cut flowers, lasting several days indoors while adding cheerful color to floral arrangements. For gardeners who dream of vibrant flower beds without constant work, black-eyed Susans remain one of the easiest and most rewarding perennials to grow. 4. Yarrow. If there were ever a perennial created for gardeners who don't have time for constant maintenance, yarrow would certainly deserve that title. This remarkably durable plant has flourished for centuries across open meadows, rocky hillsides, grasslands, and roadsides, surviving in places where many cultivated flowers would never last. That natural toughness makes it an outstanding choice for almost any home garden. Yarrow produces broad, flattened clusters of tiny blossoms that rise gracefully above soft, fern-like foliage. Depending on the variety, the flowers may bloom in shades of white, yellow, pink, coral, orange, or deep red, creating colorful displays that continue for many weeks. What truly sets yarrow apart is its ability to thrive under difficult conditions. Poor soil, rocky ground, scorching summer temperatures, and long periods without rain rarely slow it down. In fact, giving it too much attention often creates more problems than leaving it alone. Rich soil and excessive watering can produce weak stems and fewer blooms, while plants growing in lean, well-drained soil remain compact, sturdy, and covered with flowers. Yarrow naturally spreads through underground rhizomes that slowly expand into larger colonies every season. After several years, these clumps can easily be divided into numerous new plants, allowing gardeners to fill borders and flower beds without purchasing additional perennials. Another reason for its popularity is its exceptionally long flowering season. Beginning in early summer, fresh blooms continue appearing well into late summer, especially when faded flower heads are removed occasionally. Even without deadheading, however, yarrow usually continues putting on an impressive display. Beyond its beauty, yarrow provides enormous ecological value. Its flat flower clusters create perfect landing platforms for tiny native bees, hoverflies, lacewings, parasitic wasps, and many other beneficial insects that naturally help reduce common garden pests. The aromatic foliage also makes the plant less attractive to deer and rabbits in many regions. Although no perennial is completely immune to hungry wildlife, yarrow is often left untouched while neighboring plants are browsed. Fresh flowers make long-lasting bouquets indoors, and once dried they retain much of their color, making them excellent for decorative arrangements that can last for months. Even during winter, yarrow continues contributing to the landscape. Many gardeners leave the dried stems standing because frost-covered flower heads create beautiful seasonal texture while providing shelter for beneficial insects. When spring arrives, removing the old stems allows vigorous new growth to quickly emerge. Once established, yarrow asks for remarkably little care. It requires very little watering, almost no fertilizing, and rarely demands special attention. Instead, it quietly grows larger every year, rewarding gardeners with dependable beauty despite minimal effort. Yarrow is proof that some of the easiest plants to grow are often among the most rewarding. 5. Shasta Daisy. Few flowers capture the cheerful spirit of summer quite like the timeless Shasta Daisy. With its brilliant white petals surrounding sunny golden centers, this classic perennial brightens almost any landscape with effortless elegance. Although its delicate appearance suggests it might require constant attention, Shasta Daisy is actually one of the toughest and most dependable flowering plants you can grow. Once established, it tolerates summer heat, short dry periods, average soil, and occasional neglect without sacrificing its beauty. One of its greatest strengths is its impressive longevity. Every year, underground crowns gradually expand, transforming a small clump into a large mound covered with dozens of flower stems. Every few years, mature plants can be divided to rejuvenate growth while producing plenty of free plants for new flower beds or borders. A single purchase can eventually provide enough daisies to fill large areas of the garden. Flowering typically begins in early summer and continues well into midsummer. Removing faded blooms encourages additional buds to open, extending the colorful display long after many spring flowers have disappeared. Shasta daisies also make outstanding cut flowers. Their sturdy stems and large blossoms remain fresh indoors for many days, allowing gardeners to enjoy beautiful bouquets without sacrificing the appearance of outdoor flower beds. Pollinators appreciate them just as much. Bees gather pollen from the bright yellow centers, butterflies regularly visit the flowers throughout the day, and many beneficial insects rely on the nectar during the busiest weeks of summer. Growing them successfully couldn't be much easier. Full sun produces the heaviest flowering, although plants can tolerate light afternoon shade in warmer climates. They perform best in well-drained soil, but remain surprisingly forgiving of less than perfect conditions, as long as water doesn't remain around the roots for extended periods. Once the plants become established, natural rainfall usually provides all the moisture they need except during unusually long dry spells. In fact, Excessive watering often weakens the plants more than occasional drought. Diseases are uncommon when air circulation is good, and deer often ignore Shasta daisies while feeding on more appealing plants nearby. As autumn arrives, leaving some dried flower heads standing adds texture to the landscape while providing food for birds through the colder months. The old stems also help protect the plant's crown during winter, before vigorous new growth emerges the following spring. Perhaps the greatest compliment any gardener can give a perennial is forgetting it exists because it never causes problems. Year after year, Shasta daisies quietly return, bloom generously, multiply steadily, and continue rewarding gardeners with very little effort. For anyone seeking dependable beauty without constant maintenance, they remain one of the finest choices available. 6. Bee balm. If you dream of a garden alive with hummingbirds, butterflies, and countless buzzing bees from morning until evening, bee balm deserves a place among your favorite perennials. This colorful native wildflower is celebrated not only for its spectacular blooms, but also for its remarkable toughness. Once established, it becomes one of those reliable plants that returns each year larger, healthier, and even more impressive than before. Its unusual blossoms resemble colorful fireworks, with long tubular petals radiating outward in brilliant shades of scarlet, pink, lavender, purple, or white, depending on the variety. These flowers are perfectly adapted for hummingbirds, whose long beaks easily reach the nectar hidden deep inside each bloom. Bees are equally attracted to them, and during peak flowering, it's common to see several pollinators feeding from the same clump at once. Bee balm naturally spreads through underground rhizomes that gradually produce new shoots around the original plant. Within just a few growing seasons, a small planting can expand into a large colony covered with hundreds of blossoms. This vigorous growth allows gardeners to divide mature clumps every few years, creating free plants for additional flower beds or sharing them with neighbors and friends. Bee balm performs best in full sun, although it also grows well in partial shade, particularly where afternoons become extremely hot. Rich, moderately moist soil encourages lush growth, but mature plants become much more drought-tolerant than many gardeners realize. Another enjoyable feature is its pleasantly fragrant foliage. Crushing a leaf releases a refreshing mint-like aroma because bee balm belongs to the mint family. This scent often discourages deer from browsing, while making the garden even more enjoyable for people. Historically, bee balm has also been valued for herbal teas and traditional medicinal uses, giving the plant significance beyond its ornamental beauty. Like many vigorous perennials, bee balm benefits from occasional division, which helps reduce overcrowding while encouraging abundant flowering year after year. Even after blooming finishes, the seed heads continue adding texture to the landscape through late summer and autumn. Birds often visit them in search of seeds, while beneficial insects use the remaining stems as seasonal shelter. One concern sometimes mentioned is powdery mildew, especially in humid climates. Fortunately, this problem can usually be minimized by planting bee balm where air circulates freely and avoiding overcrowded conditions. Even if mildew develops late in the season, healthy plants generally continue flowering successfully. More than almost any other perennial, bee balm transforms a garden into a vibrant habitat, filled with movement, buzzing pollinators, and colorful wildlife. Plant it once, allow it room to spread, and you'll quickly understand why generations of gardeners continue recommending this beautiful and resilient perennial. 7. Peony. Saving one of the most legendary perennials for last, we arrive at a flower that has become a symbol of permanence and longevity. Peonies are famous for living not just for decades, but sometimes for generations. It isn't unusual to discover magnificent peony clumps still blooming beside old homes long after the original gardeners who planted them have passed away. Some documented plants have continued flowering beautifully for 50, 75, or even well over 100 years. Just imagine that for a moment. A single afternoon spent planting a peony today could reward your children, grandchildren, and even future generations with breathtaking blooms every spring. Their enormous blossoms are among the most spectacular flowers found in any garden. Depending on the variety, blooms may appear in pure white, soft blush pink, coral, rose, crimson, burgundy, and many other beautiful shades. Many varieties also fill the surrounding garden with a rich, unforgettable fragrance. Despite their luxurious appearance, established peonies are surprisingly easy to maintain. Once planted correctly, they prefer to remain undisturbed for decades. Unlike many other perennials that require frequent division, peonies usually perform best when left in the same location year after year. Every spring, reddish shoots emerge from the soil before quickly developing into lush green foliage and large flower buds. As the years pass, each plant becomes larger, producing more stems and increasingly spectacular displays with very little effort from the gardener. Peonies thrive in full sun, although gardeners in warmer climates often find that light afternoon shade helps extend the life of the flowers. Well-drained soil is essential because the roots dislike remaining wet during winter. During the first growing season, regular watering encourages strong root development. After establishment, mature plants tolerate dry periods surprisingly well and usually require supplemental watering only during extended droughts. One of the most common planting mistakes is burying the buds, often called eyes, too deeply. They should sit only 1 to 2 inches beneath the soil surface. Planting them deeper frequently reduces flowering, even when the plant itself appears healthy. Once planted correctly, peonies require very little care beyond an occasional layer of compost each spring. Even after flowering ends, their lush foliage continues adding structure and beauty to mixed borders throughout the growing season, before turning attractive shades of bronze and deep red in autumn. Peonies are also highly resistant to most pests and diseases. Deer rarely bother them, rabbits usually ignore them, and serious insect problems are uncommon. Although ants are often seen crawling across developing flower buds, they do not damage the plants. Instead, they feed on the sweet nectar produced by the buds and may even help discourage certain unwanted insects. Perhaps the greatest lesson peonies teach is that successful gardening doesn't always require constant work. Choosing naturally long-lived, dependable plants often produces the most rewarding landscapes. Instead of replacing annual flowers every season, watering thirsty plants every weekend, or endlessly maintaining demanding flower beds, you can create a garden filled with resilient perennials that become more beautiful every year. Imagine walking through your landscape 5 or 10 years from now. Daylilies have spread into colorful drifts. Coneflowers are alive with butterflies. Black-eyed Susans brighten every border with golden blooms. Yarrow fills empty spaces with graceful clusters of flowers. Shasta daisies return as faithfully as summer itself. Bee balm hums with bees and hummingbirds. And towering above them all, magnificent peonies continue blooming just as beautifully as they did years before. That is the true secret to effortless gardening. It isn't about working harder. It's about choosing plants that naturally do the work for you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss more gardening tips, low-maintenance planting ideas, and expert growing advice. Let us know in the comments which of these nearly indestructible perennials is already growing in your garden, or which one you're excited to plant this June. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.